Do you really have to niche down to be successful in private practice? Well, in this video, you're gonna find out. Stay tuned and let's dive in. It's become the age-old question in private practice. Do I really need to have a niche in order to be successful? Well, let me tell you this, there's no quick answer, but I'm gonna make this answer as quick as possible for you. The short answer is, it depends, and you just need to be niched down enough to get the results that you want. The thing you have to remember with all of this is that there's no easy answers in life, and especially not in private practice. So what you don't want to do is just go seeking out random free information or from therapists all over the country, free Facebook groups, wherever, and say, hey, do I have to have a niche? Or I heard my neighbor down the street has a niche and they're making $100,000, so I must need to have a niche, right? Or my niche needs to be as narrow as humanly possible, right? Well, not necessarily. So by the end of this video, you're gonna be able to answer for yourself, how niche down do I need to be successful in my private practice? You're also gonna understand how to examine and figure out whether your niche is too narrow, and if it is too narrow, I'm going to tell you exactly what to do about it. If you're watching this video and you're building a practice in downtown Manhattan, the answer for you is going to be a lot different than if you're growing a private practice in a small rural town in Ohio. So part of it absolutely has to do with a number of factors, including your market, the size of that market, the needs of that market, your own background and training, and ultimately, again, just the viability of your niche within a certain market. So a lot of that's going to depend on the factors that are unique to you and your market, your location, and your private practice. I believe that a lot of therapists out there right now are niching down way too narrow, and then they're really frustrated when they don't get the results that they want. But first, let's talk about how to determine if your niche is too narrow. Okay, so your niche might be too narrow if, first of all, you're just simply not getting clients, or if you're getting attention to your website, but you're not getting people jumping off of your website and onto a call with you or filling out your contact form. So you might start by just evaluating the results you're currently getting when it comes to your marketing efforts in your private practice. From there, you're gonna ask yourself, are you in a market that's already really small? So if you have a really small niche, in a really narrow niche in a really small practice, well, then it's just a simple numbers game at that point, right? On one hand, yes, it's good to appeal to a smaller group of people, but on the other hand, if that group of people is a lot harder to find or to communicate with within the larger whole, then that's gonna be really frustrating. You're gonna need to do a lot more marketing efforts to get the results that you want. So for instance, I worked with a therapist who was focusing on female veterans with grief. Now, this might seem like a good niche to have, and if you can find those female veterans with grief, then you might have a very viable niche. But the problem for her was people just weren't searching for it. So when it came to her digital marketing and getting clients consistently online, those people just weren't finding her fast enough for her to grow her practice and hit her goals. So what we had to do in that case was broaden her niche, right? So you might just broaden it a little bit to female veterans, or you might broaden it even further from there to just veterans. Another way you might realize your niche is not working is if you're simply unhappy with your niche. A lot of therapists I see, they just kind of felt pressured to niche down, so they niche down really narrowly like that therapist did, and then they're really frustrated with the results. The reality is, a lot of us are generalists at the end of the day. Your niche is just kind of like one door through which a client can enter your home, so to speak. You're gonna have many doors, and in fact, most of us, myself included, have a number of niche areas, not just one niche. Okay, let's get a little bit more concrete about how to figure out if your niche is too narrow. Well, if you're getting clients online and if marketing yourself online is part of the equation, which I hope it is, then you need to start by looking at your website data. More specifically, we need to measure your website conversion rate. I don't think many people are teaching this to therapists, but I think it's extremely important for you to know. The way that I measure website conversion rate in just a quick and easy manner is essentially the number of unique people that came to your site in a given period divided by the number of people who reached out from your site in a given period. So one step further than that, this has to do with your Google Analytics. You're going to look at the number of unique users within your Google Analytics and then measure somewhere and track this information as to how many people reached out, how many of those users reached out. So it's like if you measured how many people walked through the door of your store and then how many people actually bought, that could be the conversion rate of your store. You want to do the same thing for your website to know whether or not it's really working. Now, you want to have at least 4 weeks of website data before you make any conclusion. Ideally, you would have more, closer to 6 to 8 weeks of website data, but at minimum, you want to have 4 weeks of data before you make any conclusions. So if you're just maybe wondering or thinking my niche might be too narrow or I might want to change my niche, then you would just start by getting 4 weeks of website data before you change anything at all. That way you'll be able to tell and have some confidence about the fact that the change that you just made actually produced the result. So we've got to be good experimenters here. We've got to be a bit scientific about what we're doing in our private practice, meaning you have to just isolate and change one variable at a time like a good experimenter. Now, so what kind of website conversion rate should you be looking for? Well, what I teach in the benchmark for the students in my program, it's called Fully Booked, our benchmark is 6%. So roughly, if you have 100 people come to your website, we want at least 6 of those people reaching out. Now, that might not sound like a lot, and hopefully your conversion rate is beyond 6%, but again, just a standard bench rate that I would personally be pretty happy with is somewhere around 6%. What I would say is if you've gotten enough website data of at least 4 weeks, and your website conversion rate is 4% or less, then your niche might be too narrow or something else might be getting in the way. So it might not even be your niche. It might be something with your copy or your tagline or the aesthetic of your website or your fees or something like that. So there's a number of variables that it could be, but again, if we're thinking it could be the niche, then we just want to address the niche and again, change one variable at a time. Okay, so let's say you've decided your niche is in fact too narrow. Well, let's talk about what to do about it. Let's go. Okay, so let's say you've decided that your niche is too narrow and you want to expand it a bit. How do you do that when it comes to your digital marketing? Well, the first thing that I would do is I would expand basically the copy and the brand from starting with your homepage. The homepage is really what I would consider kind of the top of your funnel, right? If we're talking about your website. So it needs to be the widest part of your brand. So that means if you have a bunch of different services and specialties and niches within your practice, like EMDR and eating disorders and social anxiety and things like that, well, then you don't want to lead with something that's so narrow that it's going to exclude a lot of people, right? So going back to our example of female veterans with grief, if we want to expand that a bit, we might just start at the very top of our funnel on our homepage and say, our tagline has something to do with veterans, helping veterans heal or something like that. And then as they move down the website, they go to the more narrow parts of our funnel, so to speak, and they're going to find themselves into the kind of slots that they belong in. So are you a female veteran? Are you a female veteran dealing with grief? Are you a male veteran dealing with anger issues, etc.? They'll find their way into those more narrow places of your website. So again, I know it's hard, but start by just finding a thread that is universal to essentially anyone in your target market. These changes need to include everything between your tagline, the rest of your copy, the images on your website, everything you're doing to communicate to your ideal client. Okay, once you've widened your brand a bit, and you're appealing to a larger group of people, from there, the next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna leave what you have after you've made these changes, and you're gonna study your website data again for at least 4 weeks. So again, we're looking at our website conversion rate for at least 4 weeks, and we wanna see, did that website conversion rate go up by a significant amount, and is it staying up for a significant period of time? Now, if we've really isolated these variables and we've done it carefully and then we've measured again carefully, then you should be able to confidently conclude that the change you just made produced the result that you were hoping for. If not, you might want to widen your brand even further at kind of the top of your funnel, and then again, try to find that universal hook that's going to encourage people to read more or to go to the more narrow parts of your website, and then again, repeat this same process of studying, making an intervention, and then studying again. All right, guys, well, there you have it. I answered your question of, do I really have to niche down to be successful? Or in other words, how niche down do I need to be in order to be successful? You know that the answer is, it depends, and you just need to be niche down enough to get the results you want. You also learned how to determine whether your niche might be too narrow based on how people are responding to your website, and then what to do if you've concluded that your website or your niche is too narrow. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a lot. If I can help you in any way, just head to privatepracticeworkshop.com and I would love to hear from you. Otherwise, plenty of other free videos on this channel. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you very soon. Cheers.